everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a tools video. So all the tools that I use in my clay projects. So I will go over all the tools that I use and hopefully I will have a picture of where you can get these tools, how much they cost. Some of them I just get at my local Walmart, so I will let you know which ones those are. So the first set of tools I wanted to go over are these dot tools. I use these dot tools in most of my projects. You can see that the tips go from like a smaller to a larger, and the other side is actually the same size in all these tools. My next set of tools are these silicone tools. They come in a set as well. The one I use the most is this tool here. I use it in pretty much every single figurine that I make. Sometimes I use this kind of chiseled tip. And the ones I use the least are these three. Sometimes I use this one for resin, like to scoop resin, which you can see I actually have some resin left on it. I don't really use these for my clay. This one is really flimsy, so I don't use it for clay that much. And they also kind of just have weird shapes. So these two are the only two I really use, this one being my most used tool. Actually, I thought I got them on Amazon, but I couldn't find my purchase order, so I'm not really sure where I got them from, but I will look and see where you could get these. Going with the same theme of silicone tools, these are just the larger versions. As you can see, this is the smallest one of that. I don't use these as much as I used to, just because I prefer this size more. Again, the two that I used or used to use the most are these two. Like I said, these just have kind of like a weird shape that I don't really use for clay all that much, but they might be useful to somebody else if they're doing something different with clay. I got these on Amazon for $7.89 when I purchased them. These set of tools I actually got from Walmart, and they're not clay tools. They're actually like cake and baking tools, or like fondant tools. These are nice for making like really big flower petals to roll out, although they do have like a ridge on the top that makes kind of a weird indent in your clay, so I don't use them really anymore. This tool I use for when I make ears, so like my horse ears or my cow ears. I use both ends, and then I also use this sometimes for making the nostrils of the horses. So I do use both sides of this tool. And then there's also this tool. It's kind of like a roller. This would be nice for kind of cutting things, and this kind of has texture to it. You could also use the handles for texture. Next, I'm going to talk about the cutlery. So I use X-Acto knives in every project that I do. It's almost essential to have a knife. I use both of these pretty frequently. Obviously the larger knife for cutting bigger chunks of clay, and I use the X-Acto knife for more precision cutting. I also use the texture of the handle in my snake projects. So I roll this along the clay and it makes kind of like snake skin. So I have 2 of these. You can get these at any Walmart or your hardware store or even craft stores. Another tool I have is the needle tool. This is made out of clay, and I just added some glitter to it because I really like glitter. So this is just like a sewing needle, and then I just bake some clay around it. I actually formed it to my hand, so it kind of has a nice grip to it. I use shape cutting tools in some of my projects, mostly the circle cutter. These come in packs, all these do, so you have varying sizes of each shape. This is just plastic and these are metal. You can get these at any craft store. Some texturing tools I use are these bracelets. I'm not quite sure where I got these from. I know it was a huge set of bracelets, but these have some nice texture on them. This one I use quite a bit for horsehair, when I do my swirly horsehair. This one's got a kind of nice texture. I also use these for when I make scarves, to make like a little pattern in the scarf. So these are really nice. I know I've got more, I just don't know where they're at. Another set of tools that's essential almost to any clayer is a rolling tool. I have an acrylic roller that I got from Michael's, but I also have a pasta machine. And I know you can't really see this that well, but this is my pasta machine. I think I got this at Michael's a really long time ago. It was on sale. It has broken since then, and I have like the bearings or something inside went out, and I had to shove clay in here to keep it from falling out. So yeah, I definitely need a new clay roller, but I'm just really cheap and I don't want to get a new one. So yeah, it works when I need it to. Things would definitely be harder without it. Another tool that I use in every one of my projects is a ceramic tile. I have quite a few of these. I have at least 5 that I currently work on. So I use a ceramic tile. It kind of distributes the heat a lot better. So this is a must for me. When I'm baking a piece of clay that I do not want to get shiny on the bottom from my ceramic tile, because the tile is shiny, so your piece will be shiny on the bottom where it's contacting the tile. So when I have something that I don't want to be shiny or flattened out, I use a piece of shirt. This is an old shirt that I've just cut into the shape of my tile. This keeps your pieces from getting shiny. I recommend, if you're gonna do the shirt, to make sure you get all the pills off. I just took a lighter and just really gently went over the shirt to burn any loose fibers before baking on it, because you will get shirt hairs or fibers caught in your clay. This is my clay oven. It is strictly for clay. It is in my craft room. This is the only thing that I bake on. I will not bake in my oven in my kitchen because of the fumes. I would highly recommend getting an oven like this for polymer clay. It's really nice. It has the timer on it here. I've seen so many people say that they forget their clay pieces and they burn them. Well, you can't really do that with this. You have to set the timer. It goes up to a half an hour. You want to bake your pieces longer, just turn it on again. I always tent my pieces. So let's say I have some clay on this. You kind of have to be careful because your heater element is up here. And you also have a heater element under there. So rather than baking your clay strictly on the metal, I bake on my tile. When I put my piece in there, I will tent it so that the heater element doesn't burn your piece. So that brings me to foil. As you can see, I use foil to tent my pieces every time I bake. You can also use foil inside of your clay figurines. When you don't want to use a whole bunch of clay and you want to make your piece lighter or make an armature, foil is a really good filler for inside of your pieces. You just have to make sure that you compress this down really good and make sure that your clay is stuck to it so that there's no air bubbles inside. This works really well, and I use this all the time. Similar to foil, I use plastic wrap. Let's say you want to make a pendant. I'm just going to use a dirty piece of scrap clay for this. Let's say you have a pendant that you want to cut out, but you hate the sharp edges that a cutter gives. You can use a piece of plastic wrap. Make sure it's nice and flattened out so that there's no creases or bubbles. And you take your cutter, press down on your piece, lift the wrap up, and you can bake right on this, and your piece has a nice rounded edge instead of a really harsh cut line like just the cutter would give. I don't know if you can see the difference. My cutter is not the greatest either. It's really out of shape. But I really like the plastic wrap for that. And you can use it for like Natasha beads when you want to smooth out a Natasha bead but you don't want your fingerprints on it. Plastic wrap works really well for that. Cornstarch. I don't use it maybe once in a while. I know people put the cornstarch on a tile or something, like their baking surface, and then you can put a round bead inside a pile of cornstarch and it will keep the bead from getting flat spots on it. I know you can also use it for smoothing out a surface, and then once the clay is baked, then you can wash it off later. I have it, but I don't really use it that often. When I glaze my projects, I use a Sculpting clay glaze. I know this doesn't have a label on it because I took it off, but I will include a photo of what it looks like. You can buy this at Michael's or online on Amazon. This is really the only type of glaze that I have found stands up over time. This is meant for clay. I have tried to use many other glazes. I've tried sprays. I've tried the triple glaze. A lot of glazes just don't stand up over time. I found that this glaze in particular is really the only thing that I can count on to stay non-tacky, non-yellowing. So yeah, that is what I use. This is a really old bottle of Bacon Bond, Sculpting Bacon Bond. I've used it for probably a couple years now. That's why it looks so bad. and I've only used maybe this much, not even close to a half. I use this in a lot of my projects to connect wet clay to dry clay, and even wet clay to wet clay if I want something to hold really well. So I recommend getting you some Sculpting Bacon Bond. You're gonna need it probably at some point. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the rubbing alcohol trick. If you are working with white clay or lighter colored clay and you seem to get dirt and dust in your clay and even fingerprints constantly, and it's really annoying, I recommend getting some rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip, and I just have this kind of dirty piece of white clay. Just take your Q-tip and rub the clay. That part didn't work because it's too thick, but you can see that your clay has now become pretty clean. And the rubbing alcohol will dry, and for the most part, you're left with a pretty clean piece of clay compared to what it was before. So this is a really good hack. I use it quite a bit in my lighter colored creations. Thank you for watching. I hope that this was at least a little bit informative. I did have some little tips and tricks sprinkled in through there. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comment section. If there's something that you would like to see in the future, also you could leave a comment in the comment section. Be sure to give this video a like and subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time.